Welcome to Wabash, and we're going to do a presentation today on cool weather, festivals, and fall herbs. Of course, you know in Texas our temperature can go from 80 degrees to 40 in just a few days, and we just had that happen. Normally this time of the year we have festivals all over the city and all over the state. But now everybody is doing webinars, Zooms, and Facebook Live. So we're glad you're participating in that. Just recently I did a smooth jazz one on Saturday night with a smooth jazz cruise. Of course, fall herbs are always here, and my garden in the fall is always better than it is in the springtime, even because of the cool weather. So we can either sow the seeds or you can use the plants. One of the oldest garden clubs in Virginia, which is headquartered in Richmond, is over 100 years old. And one of their mottos is to plant a garden is to have faith in the future. I want to thank Betty and Deborah and Cindy and all the staff at Wabash for inviting me to come today. And I hope you just recently saw their newsletter. Here's a sample of what it looks like. It has a lot of information on it, and they send that out. And if you haven't signed up, be sure and sign up at wabashfeed.com and follow them on Facebook and other social media. A little overview of what we're going to do today. I'm going to explain some handouts that I have, and I've sent the PDF file to Deborah, so you can email to Wabash and get a copy of it so you don't have to be writing all the notes down. I will talk about herbs in general, and so you might want to make some notes on that. I'm going to talk about the Herb Society of America just briefly and my affiliation with our South Texas unit as well as the Houston unit. And then I'm going to show you some reference books that I recommend. And then we're going to talk about what is an herb. We have to do a little preview on that and what's the difference between an annual, a biennial, and a perennial. And then just some general information on herbs and how to plant them. And then we'll go into the fall annuals that you plant from either seed or plants. And then the perennials, which you can place from the pots into the ground now. So the mission of the Herb Society of America is promoting the use and delight of herbs through educational programs, research, and sharing the experience of the members with the community. As a disclaimer, even though we know that a lot of herbs are used for medicinal purposes, we don't really enforce that or encourage that. But we can suggest things that have worked for us or what people have used in history. A little information about the Herb Society. It was started over 86 years ago by 7 ladies up in the Boston area. There are 7 districts in the United States and Canada, and there's 40 units, of which I'm a member, and with the Southeast Texas unit, which started over 10 years ago, and also the South Texas unit in Houston, which is over 52 years old. It was started in 1968. I recently served on the National Board of Directors for the Herb Society of America. There's a lot of information on their website. You can go to herbsociety.org. There's a lot of free information. They have a Facebook page. They have a real active blog. And they do webinars throughout the year. They're free for members and a nominal fee for guests. For over 6 years, they've been doing an Herb of the Month, which it highlights some recipes using the herb. It has fun facts and fiction about the herb. And then they offer a computer screen that you can use as your saver. For more information, you can surely get in touch with me, and I'll be glad to share that with you. There's some reference books that I always like to show everybody. This is Madeline Hill's book called The Southern Herb Growing, and she's what I would consider the grandmother of herbs in Texas. She had the Hilltop Farm in Cleveland and was known throughout the state as an herb expert. Then locally in Texas we have Bill Vorney, who's up in the Fredericksburg area. He has Urban Herbal, and he is an expert on herbs as well, and this is a wonderful book. You can see I've used it a lot. I've got it rubber banded. And then thirdly, I love Lucinda Hudson, who's in Austin. She's done the Herb Garden Cookbook, and she used a lot of herbs from Mexico. She's traveled extensively to the South American countries, and that's a really good book. And of course, once you start learning about herbs, you start acquiring a whole library. But those are just some that I've used in my presentation, as well as references from the Herb Society. So what is an herb? And this is from the Herb Society's Essential Guide to the Beginning Herb Garden. Herbs are defined as plants, trees, shrubs, vines, perennials, biennials, or annuals, valued historically, presently, or potentially for their flavor, fragrance, medicinal qualities, insecticidal qualities, economic or industrial use, or in the case of dyes, for the coloring material they provide. So what's the difference between an annual, a biennial, and a perennial? Annuals have one season of growth. Some recede. Examples of that would be basil, calendula, chervil, cilantro, dill, parsley, and watercress. A biennial have 2 seasons of growth, producing leaves first and setting seeds second. Most will reseed themselves. Examples of that would be foxglove, curly parsley, and clary sage. A perennial has ongoing growth, some lasting several seasons, other many years. Examples of that would be anise, catnip, chives, lavender, lemon balm, marjoram, mint, oregano, rosemary, sage, tarragon, and thyme. All right, some general information about herbs, because it's amazing. There's basically 3 things that you always need to know, and we'll see if you pick this up as I go along. Most herbs require 4 to 6 hours of sunlight. Few that tolerate partial shade are lemon balm, mint, parsley, rosemary, and bay. Healthy soil is very important, and it promotes healthy plants and discourages disease and insects. If using raised beds, it allows for good drainage. My father, the house I'm living in Beaumont, my father in 1982 put in raised beds, and so since 1982 it's been good soil, fertilizer, manure, good soil, fertilizer, manure. So you can imagine, once you get down in there and fluff it up, everything grows. This is a funny story I always tell people about my father and manure. And I don't know if I've shared it with you, but if I have not, you've heard this story before. Anyway, this was back in the 60s when they didn't have sterilized manure. And my father went out to my uncle's farm and came back with all this manure. And my mother and I had gone shopping for the day, and we came home and the doors were open, the windows were open, and we went inside and we said, "Daddy, what is going on?" Well, it seems as though he wanted to sterilize the manure and he put it in the oven. Unfortunately, it was on broil, which you can imagine that it ignited and smoked and got smoky, and all my daddy's life we gave him a hard time about that, but he said, and he had the punchline, he said, "Yeah, but you know what? We never had any roaches in that house for years." So I'm not advising you do that, but that's just a funny anecdote. It's good to plant your herbs in groups of 3 as they like to be around each other. However, there is social distancing with the plants because the flavors will blend if you put them too close together. Most require about 1 inch of water a week. So again, the 3 things mainly that are good for herbs is 4 to 6 hours of sunlight, good soil and drainage, and then at least 1 inch of water a week. And I still use the finger rule. Stick your finger in the dirt. And I mean, even this summer when it was so hot, I have raised beds that are about this deep, and just the very few inches would be dry. But you go down a little further, it's very moist. But you need to keep it moist. And like I had some mustard greens, similar to what we have here. This is the kale, I believe. And then that's the mustard green. Anyway, one day they'd be all fluffy and upright, and then if we didn't have any rain or it was too hot, the next day they were all droopy. So you can tell by looking at them, and just be sure and give them some water. Fertilize in limited amounts, as too much encourages leafy growth. Microlife is what I recommend, and I know they have it here. It's a wonderful product, and it enhances the soil. Before I came over here, just a few days ago before we had all the rain, I put about 1/4 of a cup on all my plants, all in my yard, my raised beds. And it will just enhance the soil. It won't burn your plants, and it's really good to have. Store your herbs in an air drying or rack drying, and put in a dark glass bottle out of direct sunlight. Or you can chop and freeze in ice cube trays with a little water, puree in a blender, with a little water and freeze as well. After you freeze, take them out and put them in a Ziploc bag and then store them in the freezer. Cooking with herbs will add flavor, but you don't add all the salt that everybody's concerned with nowadays. The general rule is 3 to 5 times fresh to dried herbs. Soak dried herbs in liquid before using, such as oil, lemon juice, vinegar, or water. Another option, and you see this on the cooking shows, is where they rub them together, the dry herbs, to release some of the oils. And if I watch a lot of the cooking shows, and I'm sure you probably do too, almost everybody that's cooking is recommending and using herbs. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the fall annuals, which you can plant from seeds or from the plant. The Wabash has the dill, they have the Anaheim. Oh, let me go back to talk about my handouts, because that is one of the ones on there. It's one of the HSA. So the handouts that I have, which you can get from Wabash, is the top 10 herbs as chosen by the HSA members. Then I have a list, which I'm going over all these herbs for the fall, so that is available for you as well. Then another thing that I always like to share with people is a good thing to do for presents, homecoming, welcoming home from the hospital, Christmas holidays. If you're going to visit friends for Thanksgiving, you could do a little herb basket and put different herbs in it. And these are just some suggestions, like a hot sauce basket, which would have cherry tomatoes, jalapenos, cilantro, and some chives or onion. And then you could do a mint basket, you could do an Italian basket, you could do a Southeast Texas basket, an Asian basket, and then you could do an assorted mint basket. And then also on the back of this, I have some recipes, one of which I really like, and we'll talk about that when we get to dill, is a dill dip that I use a lot. And then this is just roasting pecans. And then this is a rosemary recipe that you use with walnuts or cashews. This one has walnuts. So anyway, we'll go over that. So the dill is one of my favorite herbs. You can use it in a lot of recipes. It's a great host for butterfly larvae and important in the butterfly garden. Be sure and have extra pots for yourself. Seeds, in contrast to the leaves, are used in different ways. So the leaves, you can chop up the dill and put them in recipes on top of salmon when you bake fish or as a decoration. But the seeds are like used in making dill pickles. Then the fennel is another great herb, annual for the fall. It comes in the green and the bronze, and it is in the parsley family. It's a host for butterfly plants, and this summer I had larvae all over my fennel in the yard. The bulb is used in cooking, and the leaves are suited for relishes, salads, and garnishes. Here's some nasturtiums here in the front, and these are they're affected by a hard freeze. They're used as culinary or ornamental. They'll grow very tall, 1 to 5 feet, and even higher, or 1 to 5 feet, even higher if you have support. And it has a peppery taste. It adds a tangy taste to salad, or you can use it in whole, like in watercress or in rolled tea sandwiches. Mix the flowers and leaves into whipped sweet butter for a savory dinner roll. And then, of course, parsley, which most everybody uses parsley. This is the Italian parsley. And it is wonderful and easy to grow from seed. We talk about, with a lot of the seeds, what I do with the seeds is I just broadcast them. I know a lot of the seed packets will tell you to plant them like a 1/2 inch deep, but most people end up planting them too deep. So this year I just kind of broadcast them. I'd maybe do a little trench and then, or mark it with the marker, and then just broadcast them. And they're all coming up. There's the seed is easy to grow for the parsley, and it has the curly or the flat parsley. It's high in vitamin C. It helps with digestion and cleanses the breath. It's used in soups, stews, gravies, salads, meat, potatoes, as well as garnishes. Be generous with tomato dishes. Other fall annuals are arugula, borage, calendula, and cilantro. And talking about cilantro, people either really like cilantro or they don't. It has a soapy taste to them, so it depends on your palate. And we're now going to talk about greens, glorious greens. I love, like I said, my fall garden right now is just magnificent, and I have a lot of greens. This is a sample of like in the bok choy family. That's a green. And then I showed you this earlier, which this is a red giant mustard. But when you think about your greens, you've also got cabbage, collard, turnip greens, kale, Swiss chard. There's all kind of varieties. There's tons of different types of lettuce, spinach. Wildflowers can be planted in the fall. Also include like the bok choy, the pak choy. This is a different choy. As well as broccoli, cauliflower, snow peas, turnips, and microgreens. This is a microgreen that Wabash has here. This is called a jazzy mix. And with the exception of microgreens, you can, like I say, broadcast the seeds in your bed. Plants can be added at any time as well. If the temperatures are high, you need to water more often. I planted a lot of mine in early September. And so, you know, we had hot September and October, so I watered more often. The microgreens, which is similar to this, or this is a microgreen, can be sowed any time of the year, and you can plant those inside. For a continued crop, sow every 7 to 14 days. Use a shallow container and 1 to 2 inches of fine seed-starting mix, and keep in a sunny window or under a grow light. If you put them in containers, you can move them depending on where the light is in your yard, and you can keep it away from the low temperatures. Sow in a single layer, and if you can top it with just a little dirt, you don't need much. Okay, now we're going to talk about the perennials now. This is the bay tree, and this is wonderful. It is slow growing. It takes full sun, attracts lacewings, deters bugs in your spices and pantries. I heard about this a while back, and I don't like any bugs in my pantry. So I told somebody, when I die, you will find bay leaves everywhere. I've got them in my cookbooks. I've got them on the pantry shelves because I don't want any bugs in the kitchen. It's added at the beginning of cooking to soups, stews, and gumbos, and retrieved at the end. The fresh leaves are stronger than dried. Now, if you do use them to deter some of the pests, you will need to change it ever so often. Another interesting thing that I've been doing as well, when I bring home like rice or cereal or flour or almond flour, I freeze it. If you put it in the freezer for a couple of days, it will kill any of the little bugs that are in there for some reason. And I don't know if it's because more people are cooking at home or some things are on the shelves longer. I'm noticing a little more of that, so I freeze it as soon as I get it. Okay, this is catnip. And if any of you have cats, you know about catnip. They love it. It's an aphrodisiac to them. Cats will love to roll in it, and they will entertain you for hours just looking at the catnip. The next one is mint. And here is this one is a Thai mint. There's all different sorts of mint. In fact, there's probably 55 different types of mint. They can grow as a small shrub if you keep them, cut fairly sharp. It has a different colors and flavors. It makes a nice hedge. One of my favorites that I've been using this year is chocolate mint, and it's great. And I saw a couple of years ago, I was up in Arkansas, and they had raised beds about as wide as this table, but maybe twice as long. And in there they had buckets or barrels. And in between there they put out pine needles. And I thought that looked really neat. So this year I pulled up several beds and I put in the barrels, and then I planted the mint in those barrels. And it looks really neat. Okay, Mexican mint marigold. Now everyone in Texas, I tell everyone they need to have Mexican mint marigold. It takes the summer heat. It will multiply, it freezes, and you can cut it off and it will come back, but it keeps multiplying. It's great. It's used like French tarragon in chicken salad, herbal vinegars, and fish. You can plant it in the herb garden, or you can plant it in your flower beds. It will grow to 3 feet high and spread like to 18 inches. It has small yellow flowers in the winter. And it's also known as Texas tarragon. Oregano, and we all know about oregano. This is a Sicilian oregano. It is used in Italian cooking. Comes in many varieties and colors and sizes. It's used in soups, casseroles, sauces, stews, stuffings, eggs, tomato-based dishes, chili, and pizza. And then right now, all over town, you're seeing a lot of rosemary. It does really well, and it will grow year-round here. I think this one is the ARP. Oh, this is a Tuscan Blue. But rosemary will come either in upright where it grows tall or prostrating where it will spread. It's easy to grow and care for. It likes full sun, good drainage, and moderate watering. Again, remember those three things. Cut back 1/3 to encourage new growth. Favorite of many, great for cooking. Used with lamb, venison, poultry, soups, stews, fish, tomato sauces, vegetables, marinades, and on the upright you can even cut off the branch and use it as a skewer when you're grilling. Okay, sage. And in the Wabash newsletter, one thing they talked about is the different herbs that we'll be using at Thanksgiving. And so sage is one of those. We're all familiar with that. It's in our dressing. This is the New York sage. And it's also used in poultry, sausage, lamb, seafood, breads, and as a spice for pork chops and pork tenderloin. Move it every couple of years as it likes a new location. And then sorrel, and we've got two different kinds here. This is the red veined, and then this is another one. I planted some sorrel last year in the garden about this time, and it's still doing well. In fact, it's kind of multiplying. It's a hardy, herbaceous herb used in culinary and ornamental settings. The first greens to show up after winter and enjoyed spring and summer. It's resistant to frost. Value for high content of vitamin A and C. Known for two French dishes, sorrel soup and sorrel sauce. It's used like spinach to brighten eggs and vegetable dishes, and in sauces for beef, chicken, and fish. Now, another wonderful thing to plant this time of the year are your strawberry plants. And Wabash has two different kinds. They have the sequoia and the Chandler. The sequoia is a hybrid berry that was developed for the coast of California area. However, it does great in warm climates. The sequoia produces large, red, dark red fruit and is suitable, again, like I said, for warmer climates. It's resistant to powdery mildew and suited for container gardening. Chandler strawberries produce a very large, medium red, glossy finish with long wedge-shaped fruit. They can handle up to 10 degrees Fahrenheit and keep them well mulched. That's another thing for your gardens. Be sure and have everything mulched for the winter. Who knows if we're going to go from hot to cold to hot to cold. And last but not least, we have thyme. Some 30 years ago, a writer said that there are probably over 22 varieties of thyme. And it's a seasoning that's used throughout the world in all different cuisines. However, it has been reported that there may even be more than 400 varieties, as it is notorious for cross-pollination, like the mints, and a new hybrid appears each year. Thyme falls into three broad groups: upright shrubs, 12 to 18 inches tall, creeping herbs up to 6 inches, and flat creepers about 1 to 2 inches. They said the test of a good gardener is to go weed your thyme, because it all kind of intersperses. The culinary are the upright and nearly all the common thyme, with most used narrow leaf French, the broadleaf English, lemon thyme, and winter varieties like silver leaf. In closing, I hope I have inspired you to try a few of the fall herbs. And here at Wabash, you can find your perfect plants, pets, and that perfect gift for the holidays. See you in the garden. All right. We'll check and see if we have